Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Undead Talk podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about Season 2, Episodes 7 through 9 of The Walking Dead. And my dad is here. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, everybody.
So I think these were 3 really good episodes. A lot happened in it. Especially Episode 9, in my opinion, was like a perfect episode of the show. So let's kick things off with Episode 7, called Pretty Much Dead Already. And it says, the group discovers a grave threat right under their noses. Rick works with Herschel to avoid a dangerous impasse, and Dale confronts Shane. So I thought the majority of this episode was actually kind of weak. I didn't feel like much happened until those last 10 minutes, where that was like an explosion of stuff that happened. And like I think like probably it gave me mid-season finale vibes. A lot of, like, the end of the episodes. Like, what did you think of episode 7?
Well, I think most of the episode was set up for that ending. Dealing with the tension, right? Are walkers still human beings? Or are they not? Are they monsters? Are there something less than? Can they be redeemed? Can they be healed? Can they be saved? And are they a threat? Or are they just sick people? And
Right.
The tension with that question is really what makes this episode and the next episode with Herschel kind of his reflecting on the whole deal, right?
For sure.
Yeah, so I thought those was a great episode, but I really loved the tension and the setup to get us to the ending.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the episode starts off with Glenn, and he tells the group that the barn is full of walkers, and this just sets up that conflict. Shane's really upset. And there's just definitely like a lot of tension here. And then we also have Rick trying to convince Herschel to let them stay, but Herschel just wants them out. That's been clear from a few episodes ago that he's just not really comfortable with them being there. So what do you think of kind of this whole situation with the walkers in the barn and the differences of opinions in it?
Well, I think Herschel's made some sort of change. A negative kind of shift over the last few episodes where he was demonstrating love, right, and acceptance and welcome. He senses that his authority is waning, that Rick and Shane are somewhat taking over, especially with Maggie and Maggie's impression of because of Glenn, and I think Herschel feels very threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And so his attitude is very much, let's get rid of this group so I can get things back to the way they were. And then we can heal the walkers, and then things will really go back, kind of a nostalgia, right? So I think Herschel's change is very interesting. Again, it's not necessarily about right and wrong, even though it does come to the head here at the end. It's about how these people are dealing with the stress. How do they deal with their boundaries being crossed? It's very interesting.
And Herschel says next step is how you calls them a plague, the group of survivors, which kind of ties into what you just said about like how he feels like they're taking over and this is his farm, and he feels judged, especially by Shane, for his decision to leave the walkers in the barn. And it's kind of, he spirals, and of course this leads into the next episode.
Well, one thing that I found interesting is he has been able to control the walkers in the sense that they are in the barn. They are not the threat.
Mm-hmm.
Rick and group are the threat because he cannot control them. And so he definitely feels that he has to make a decision, and that's where it's all headed towards. But as we'll see, he's getting pressure from all sides.
Yeah.
Especially his daughter.
Well, yeah, because Maggie, she tries to convince her dad to let the group stay. And she quotes John 13:34, which is, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And that kind of gets into Herschel's mind, because then he takes Rick and someone else to go to the swamp to collect a few walkers, and he's like, if you guys want to stay, this is how you're going to have to treat them, and this is how you're going to have to handle it. So it seems like he's starting to more and more up to the idea, and by doing that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Herschel looks and sees the people that they were before they became zombies, right?
Mhm.
He sees the image of God in them, right? Rick and group sees them as monsters because they have killed. Herschel's not seeing that.
Right.
And so there is this tension that Maggie's trying to get into her dad's mind about what is love in this new world. And Herschel seems to be kind of saying the world's changed, so we no longer need to love. At least that's the impression I get. But love with strings attached. Love, you have to do what I want. Like, you have to do the walkers the way that I want. But again, Herschel's, dealing with a lot of stress just like they all are.
Right. So we also have Carol, and she doesn't want Daryl to search for Sophia anymore. She finally, kind of is accepting that they might not find her. She's starting to lose some of that hope. And this upsets Daryl a lot, and he starts to be very rude to her, and he's still rude to her in episode 9. It kind of starts his, spiraling, too. In this specific episode, however, they make up because he takes her to the Cherokee Rose flowers, which was a nice moment, just to kind of show her that there is still hope for both for both of them, and of course Sophia. But we can definitely talk more about the Carol and Daryl stuff later. But another interesting thing is we have Dale, and he's warning Andrea about Shane, because we remember last episode they had their hookup. So he's trying to say that he's just not a good person. You need to watch out. And Andrea just kind of rubs it off and brushes it off like it's not a big deal. And this kind of scene made it seem like he might have feelings for her. I was kind of debating back and forth whether that was the case, but I feel like I'm leaning more towards that.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Last episode we talked about Dale being a father figure towards Andrea, but maybe it's more than that. But there's definitely a conflict, triangle, so to speak. Dale, Andrea, and Shane, and that's some pretty intense stuff. Very scary stuff. And Dale seems to be the only one of the three that seems to be level-headed. At least seems to be.
So we have Rick. He tells Shane that Lori is pregnant. They're having this whole disagreement about how to handle the situation with the walkers in the barn, because Shane wants to leave, Rick wants to stay, and he brings up the pregnancy as a way for them to stay, not only to Shane, but to Herschel, too. And Shane, this kind of makes him spiral even more, because he immediately goes to Lori, and he thinks the baby is his, and he also thinks that Rick should have died, because he thinks that he should be the one to protect her. And there's a lot of Shane says a lot of this kind of stuff to Lori, especially again in episode 9, where he's holding on to this nostalgia of their brief romance and probably feelings he's had for her for a while, and unwilling to accept that Rick is her husband and that he can protect her. What did you think of this whole thing?
I think it's a lot like Herschel. So for Herschel, we see his losing his authority, losing his dream for nostalgia, and for Shane, it's the same thing. With Rick taking over as the father of what he sees as his child, he's losing everything. He's losing control, and when people feel like they're losing control, when they don't have any ability to influence, they take matters into their own hands drastically, and that's what Shane does. Herschel did not. Herschel did not force the situation. Shane does. There's definitely a contrast there. Both were experiencing a loss of authority and control. Shane decided to do something drastic, and it ended up hurting people.
But before we get to that, we have Dale, and he's hiding the guns in the swamp.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And Shane confronts him, and there's a pretty tense conversation between them, where Dale is pointing the gun at Shane, about to shoot him, but he doesn't. And he kind of says something about how when the world ended, at least Dale didn't let it take him down with him like it did Shane. But I thought it was kind of weird that Dale was hiding the guns. Like, I thought, yeah, that didn't make much sense to me. But what did you think of this interaction with them?
Well, Dale, again, is a protector, right? I mean, that's his role on the show. It's that fatherly figure. He believes if he could get the guns out of there, it'll keep Shane from making a drastic decision and protect Andrea and the rest. That's an unwise decision. I mean, hiding the guns, Shane tracked him pretty quickly, and really allows Shane to realize that he has people against him in the group.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if Rick's against him because of the baby and Dale's against him, then he really is the only one to make things happen.
Yeah. So we have Glenn and Maggie, and they talk, and Glenn, really the only thing I got from this line was, or from the scene mainly, was Glenn saying that secrets get you killed. What do you think of that line?
Well, it is true in life that the secrets eventually come out and they end up hurting us one way or the other. And so I think there is a principle or kind of a message there that about humanity, that secrets are not healthy to keep hidden, and that is because Glenn can't keep a secret.
Nope.
So it's about him justifying why he tells everybody everything. So
there's a lot of stuff with like Glenn's what's going through his head and how he handles things, and this comes back up at the end of episode 9 too. So we have this big final scene where Shane lets the walkers out of the barn, and then Rick and Herschel are coming back with the walkers restrained, and then Shane shoots them, and then goes and opens the door to the barn, and then a group of them, of the group, they shoot the walkers. Somewhere in there, I guess, was Herschel's wife and stepson. What was interesting is that you thought that the final person to come out was going to be Herschel's wife.
Right.
That wasn't something that was going through my mind, but I was surprised they didn't make an impact on that, a big moment for Herschel, and it was just a random one that was just shot.
Yeah, and I think that was to build suspense to Sophia as a surprise.
Which was a surprise. I was not expecting Sophia to walk out of that barn, and then that's where things took a sad turn to end the episode off, and then Rick goes and shoots her, and that's how it ends. I was not expecting Sophia, but I am kind of glad that they resolved it. It was dragging, I feel a little bit, the investigation with her, because for most of it seemed like some people just weren't invested in it, but now it's sad, but I'm kind of glad we're moving on, moving forward in the story.
I think this is a turning point in the series because it's really truly a loss of innocence. Sophia coming out of that barn as a walker symbolizes a loss for the entire group. The people that they were are no longer, they're no longer the same people anymore. Mm-hmm. Carol, she has to confront that there is no safe places left. Her daughter is no longer alive, and I think she can't hold on to that nostalgia, and the rest of the characters can't either. Life has now changed, especially for Herschel, and we'll get into that in the next episode. There was something that changed inside of him when he saw that these people who he thought were people were actually monsters. Mm-hmm. That was a new awareness for him.
And the end of this also presents that Shane is a problem from his actions of opening the bar, and that he was going crazy. He thought he was doing the right thing, and so did a few other people, which we'll talk about that next episode. But I thought this was good. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I would say 8.5 or 9. Mm-hmm. Again, you really enjoy the action. I enjoy the action as well, but I also enjoy the setup, the building towards something. And, you know, we really could break these episodes down so much further and analyze the lines and, you know, peel the layers back on the characters. But these character arcs are just truly amazing. I think the writing here is so well done. It was a great episode.
Yeah. So let's move on to episode 8. It's called Nebraska, and the group tries to restore order in the aftermath of a terrible discovery. Herschel disappears, and Rick and Glenn must follow him into town. So this kicks off right where the last episode left off. We have the youngest daughter, Beth, and she goes to kneel beside her mom and then gets attacked. And then Andrea protects her by throwing an axe through her head, which was a pretty intense moment for Andrea. I mean, she is a hothead, but I did appreciate that moment and her being protective.
Yeah, and you know, her character continues to become Shane-like, very aggressive, very assertive, wanting to be like the guys. And this was another step forward for her.
Yeah.
In this transition.
Yeah. So, yeah, Herschel is very upset about what just happened. He kicks them all out. He's done. This was the breaking point for him. He was just starting to, like, accept or bring them in and let them stay there. And then this just ruined that. So, pretty much Shane ruined the whole group's safety. And then Herschel starts to drink again. And this leads into him going to the bar, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I felt bad for him. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a popular term being thrown around from philosophy, but it's being used in faith circles called faith deconstruction. It's when you pretty much realize that your foundation is no longer solid, and you go through this process of basically taking down the wall, destroying your foundation, and then rebuilding it. And Herschel's going through this process. Those human beings that became zombies were no longer able to be the same people, or healed, so to speak. And so he had to process that. And by having all of those walkers in his barn, he put everybody at risk.
Right.
And so he had a crack, breaking point. And it's allowing him, because you see this transition moving forward from this episode on, something's changing inside of him. He is becoming a little bit more open to Rick's leadership. And we see that throughout.
So we have Rick, and he's starting to question his choices. He thinks he questions, taking so long with this investigation and pushing it so hard, when Sophia was in the barn the whole time, and, Lori convinces him that, he wasn't at fault, and they had no idea. Nobody had any idea that it was her in the barn.
Well, and Herschel says he didn't have any idea. And maybe it was Otis that did it.
I'm pretty sure it was Otis who did it, yeah.
But there is a lot of questions of people, because, they did take a long time to try to find Sophia. 7 episodes. So, yeah, it's interesting how that particular revelation of Sophia being a walker is changing everybody and everything.
Yeah. And we have Andrea and T-Dog, and they believe that Shane did the right thing. Dale does not. But it's interesting how we have, these three, Shane, Andrea, and T-Dog, who are kind of, not really forming an alliance necessarily, but, have, a different belief or different mindset than a lot of the other people in the group. Again, I don't think the three of them are going to, form an alliance just because of where Shane's character is headed. But it does show you that there are other people in this group besides Shane with that same mindset and viewpoint.
Yeah, it's your classic survival of the fittest. You have to be the aggressor. You have to make things happen, because in a world of scarcity, in a world where there's death around every corner, a threat around every corner, you gotta be the one who draws first, acts first, decides first. And Rick is questioning all of that. Has he been too passive in his decision making? Should he be more assertive, like a Shane? And not that he desires to be like Shane, because, as you said, Shane's a problem. But should he become more assertive?
Right.
Which takes us to the bar. And that scene is wild.
But, so, we also have Carol, and she's going through the grieving. She's grieving. this meant a lot to her. She was very close to her daughter, especially with the abusive relationship with Ed. And it's hard for her to let go. And she doesn't want to go to the funeral, and then we see her picking apart the Cherokee Rose flowers. And I thought the actress did a great job with that, with kind of portraying that of Carol in this episode. I think she's a great actress.
I agree. I love Carol's the actress. I also love her character.
Yeah.
And again, getting back to what I said at the end of episode 7, there's a loss of innocence here. She has to grow up. Mm-hmm. She has to transition into this new world, and that's going to require her to be a different person.
Yeah, for sure.
And she realizes that, and that's her resistance for going to the funeral and all that, is that it's requiring a change.
But we do have a nice moment between Shane and Carol.
Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of show more of Shane's humane side a bit. I don't think these two have ever interacted before. I like the scene between them. It wasn't anything like super significant, but we've seen Shane, whether it's completely genuine, we have seen him be there for Rick. We've seen him be there for Lori and Carl. Again, not fully genuine at times, but he does have that side of him that he's a protector.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote a Russian author said, the line of good and evil runs down the center of each person, or runs between, so there's good and evil in everyone. And Shane, we got a glimpse of that. We got to see some of his goodness.
Yeah.
It's not that he's purely evil. He is wrestling like every single person alive today. We're kind of trying to deal with the good and the evil that's swirling within us, and choosing good instead of evil, and that's hard. Mm-hmm. One thing I did want to say, getting back to, what was her name? The very beginning, she's the one who got attacked by the walker, Beth. Mm-hmm. And so she's laid up in a kind of a state of shock, and it just reminds you of the effect of trauma, right? Mm-hmm. And that particular event broke her. It broke something inside. For most people, we go through traumatic experiences, and there isn't a dramatic change on the outside like that. Mm-hmm. Usually it's inside. Something breaks on the inside that comes back later. Mm-hmm. In Beth, we see that something cracked inside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she's laid up in a comatose state.
Yeah. So so Beth collapses, and she's experiencing this shock thing, and then we find out Herschel is gone, so Rick and Glenn are going to go find him. But we also have Maggie telling Glenn that she loves him, which is a pretty significant moment for them. He doesn't say it back yet. I'm sure that's coming at some point, but and she's like, if you guys leave, would you stay? And he's just not sure. He clearly probably does love her. It's just, there's just a lot at stake, obviously, and that's just another thing going through Glenn's mind is, can he commit to this serious relationship with Maggie?
I think Maggie is more mature than Glenn. Mm-hmm. She's the one who initiates in their relationship.
For sure. And
I think that scares Glenn. Mm-hmm. Is he ready to love? Is he man enough to protect? We've seen this running through him before. That immaturity of Glenn scares himself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Maggie's able to see through that to the man he is becoming. And she's the same one who gave the quote about love from the Gospel of John last episode. And so she's moving forward in that idea of love.
Yeah, for sure. So we have Dale, and he tells Lori that Shane is dangerous and that he thinks he killed Otis. And this kind of, Lori doesn't fully realize it until next episode of how dangerous Shane is. But we had that, and then we also had Lori asking Daryl to go into town to just check on Rick and Glenn, and he refuses, and he's kind of done with helping the group after the whole thing with Sophia. And again, we get more with Daryl next episode. We get more of the Lori and Shane thing. next episode, but a pretty big. Lori heads into town and she gets into a car wreck, and this leads right into next episode. I thought it was kind of interesting how like Lori getting into the wreck, like you kind of almost forgot about it at the end of the episode with how much happens after it.
Yeah, yeah. She, that decision to go out on her own was a big decision for her character.
Yeah.
She seeks help, can't find the help, so she goes anyway. It's a big step forward for her, risking not just her, but her baby.
Her baby and her son.
Yeah, and her son, who she leaves behind in the trust of others.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. I find Daryl going back and forth between his old life and his new life is so shocking. Like, when he goes back, he's just like his brother Merle, and he's really, really aggressive and all that. But then he becomes soft and gentle back and forth. And again, this is all part of Daryl's character development as well as Lori's. All right, but enough about that. Let's get to that last scene.
Let's get to that last scene. We have a big talk between Rick and Herschel. It's a really long conversation, but one thing I do want to point out, I said earlier that Herschel calls them a plague, and we talked about how he feels threatened by them, but Rick comes back at him with this quote, and he says, "And now there are people back at home trying to hang on. They need us, even if it's just to give them a reason to go on, even if we don't believe it ourselves. This isn't about what we believe anymore. It's about them," which I think is a really powerful quote, and it really kind of sums up this whole show and the human aspect of it and how these characters are feeling and what leaders need to do.
Yeah, it's thinking of others first, right?
Yeah.
And that's the idea of the collective is more powerful than the individual. Yeah, that's so hard to learn, for everybody. But these characters are thrust into that scenario where they have to think of others and what the needs are of the group. So it's not just about them.
Yeah, and Herschel, after listening to all of this, he puts the alcohol down, and then we have two guys walk in named Dave and Tony, and then we have this whole long talk between them, and this whole time we're like, these are shady guys. At least that's what I thought. And it's like, it's building and building and building to the point where Rick shoots them, which was a really big moment, and I think the first time he's killed like a human, like humans on the show. What did you think of that final scene?
Well, again, Rick is coming into this episode, coming into this situation, questioning his leadership. Can he make the decision? Can he be assertive? Can he do the right thing when the threat's right in front of him? And here's that opportunity to act, and he does. And he does so as a last resort, and he does so, and we see this in the next episode too, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's protecting those that he loves. And when someone pulls a gun on you and the people that you love, you'll defend them, not with the intent of hurting the other person, but truly to protect the people that you love. And that's hard stuff. And Rick is stepping up to do the right thing in this new world.
So, yeah, for sure. And that is where the episode ends off. Well, and then we have the group, they're burning I think it's just Shane, Andrea, and T-Dog, honestly. They're the three who are burning the rest of the walkers to end the episode.
Yeah. That old world is dying, is burning.
Yeah.
They're in a new world, and everything's changed, including humans have changed. They're now threats. So you have walkers, you have these gangs, these two shady characters, which was actually quite comical. Their personalities and stuff and the way they were acting. But the world's changed. You can't trust people. You can't, there's a threat everywhere. And the fire kind of burning the last remains of that old world symbolizes that we're moving into new territory now.
Yeah, for sure. So, I would say I would give this one an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. It was a solid one. It dealt with the aftermath, I thought, pretty good, and that last 5 minutes were crazy.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I think it's a good episode. Let me ask you, why is it called Nebraska? Do you remember?
Because that was the connection with like Dave and Tony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Were they from Nebraska? Heading to Nebraska? I don't remember.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
So episode 9, Trigger Finger. And it says, trapped, Rick, Herschel, and Glenn fight to survive against new foes, both dead and alive. Shane makes it his mission to bring Lori back to the farm. So we do get an update with Lori to start the episode, and this really, like, the walker breaks through the glass, which was crazy. And she has to, like, she doesn't have, like, Rick or Shane there to protect her. She has to deal with it on her own, which is a huge moment for her character. And there's 2 walkers, and she takes out both of them. What do you think of that, the whole thing with Lori?
Well, it's about survival, and she has to survive, and she could freak out and just, freeze in the moment.
Yeah,
but she doesn't, and she acts, and she protects herself and the baby, and indirectly Carl too.
I do think she has leadership qualities, different than Rick or Shane or any of them, but I think she can take charge, and she has went before to be a leader. I think she definitely has qualities there for that. So we have Dave and Tony's friends, and they come up and they attack Rick, Herschel, and Glenn. And we get a big action sequence here, where we almost think maybe Glenn got shot, but we find out he's just frozen, and that comes back up later in the episode. But we also have one of the guys named Randall. He has to jump from a roof to land into his friend's truck, but then his leg gets stuck in the fence, and his friend leaves him. So he's yelling out for help, and then Rick, Herschel, and Glenn, they go over to help Randall, and that's when walkers are starting to come up because they heard the gunshot, and it's just a really, really full of action moment. And then we have him lifting the leg up, and so they take Randall with them. But this was, and we also had Herschel shooting too, which was the first time we've seen that. So there was a lot going on in, like, the first half of this episode. What did you think of all of it?
Gosh, there's so much. Let's talk about Glenn freezing. So, remember we talked about last episode, Glenn is trying to deal with the fact that, he knows he's immature. He has a woman who loves him, and can he rise to the occasion and do what Rick does, protect? Can he rise to the occasion and do what Herschel's doing, grow and change? And unfortunately, in this particular decision, he froze. And I know that will affect him moving forward. And he feels awful about it.
Yeah.
You have Herschel doing what it takes. You have Herschel wanting to save Randall, the guy with the leg on the fence. Again, he cares about humanity, wants to protect and save and heal and do all of those things. That's who Herschel is. And so I find that very significant, even to the point of putting the rest of the group in danger, which Shane ends up coming back really harsh there on that idea. But yeah, the threats are out there. It's this gang of people, and it's walkers, and this Randall threat.
But we also have Shane, and he goes to find Lori, and then he lies to her and says that Rick's already back home. You would think that would have been like a red flag for Lori, because you think she would think, like, why didn't Rick just come and find me then?
Yeah, she was trusting.
Yeah,
and that changed everything. I think that thing, that lie, flipped a switch with Lori.
Yeah.
She no longer sees him as a nice guy or a protector or a helper. She sees him as a problem.
Dangerous.
Yeah.
And then Shane reveals Lori's pregnancy to the group. So Shane is just doing, like, he's like, I don't know what the best way to say it, but he is, like, revealing everything. He's moving the story forward, which I do appreciate. But we also have Daryl, and he lashes out at Carol again. He's like, you're not my problem, like, Sophia wasn't mine, and it's just interesting to see his spiral, and I do wonder where his character is going to go from this, and what caused this change, and how he's treating everyone. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's just bouncing back and forth. New Daryl, old Daryl, new Daryl, old Daryl. And I think that back and forth is the writer's way of saying that he's fighting against the change that's necessary. He's reverting back to his former destructive ways that Merle exhibited. And this group, he's falling in love with them in a family sort of way. Merle is no longer his family, this group is, and he's fighting around all of that idea. And my hope is, of course, that he emerges as a compassionate protector for the group.
Well, for most of the season, he has been like a nice guy and has been changing for the better. And then this is definitely a step back for him. But I'm sure he's going to come around at some point. I think he's grieving in his own way. I mean, he wasn't close to Sophia, but he probably is feeling like, why did I waste all that time for nothing? That might be going through his mind.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's the theme of can these characters be redeemed?
Mm-hmm.
Can they forgive themselves of actions that they have done? Can Shane be redeemed? Can Shane forgive himself for what he's done?
Mm-hmm.
These are the internal dilemmas and things that aren't verbalized, but you wonder.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder what's going on inside these characters.
So we have Andrea telling Dale that Shane has done more to keep this group alive than anyone, including Rick, which was an interesting quote from her. And especially later in the episode where she has a scene with Shane that like kind of shows like a different side to her. But to me, that just kind of showed like, that's kind of crazy though. Like that's her viewpoint of Shane. What did you think of when she said that?
I think she's making a choice on which example of humanity that she wants to follow.
Mm-hmm.
They're all dealing with it, right? They're all processing this. She's choosing to follow in the footsteps of Shane, the person who's making things happen. Got to protect yourself. Yourself is number one. It doesn't matter what the group thinks. The exact opposite of what Rick just said in his conversation with Herschel, right, in the bar, where he was talking about you gotta. It's not about you. You got to take care of the group. So Andrea's making her decision.
Yeah. So this was a kind of a funny scene, and there's not a lot of humor in this show. So this was much appreciated when we had the gang gets back and Maggie runs past her dad and hugs Glenn. I thought that was pretty funny. But Glenn, to her surprise, he pulls away from her, and he thinks that he showed weakness because he thought of her when he was getting shot at, and he just needs some space to kind of like figure out who he wants to be, and does he want to be a leader, and does being a leader affect with his relationship with Maggie? So I thought that's an interesting conflict for them.
Yeah, well, it's like guilt and shame, and what guilt is I did something wrong. I'm going to fix the mistake. Shame means I'm a bad person. Yeah, there's nothing good in me, and I think, Glenn is running through that. He, and he hides. He runs away because he's ashamed. He failed, and he feels like he's a bad person. And we know shame kills, just like Shane kills, right? But I think there's a lot going on in there. And can he rise to the occasion to be loved? Can he be loved? And I think the answer to that question we know is yes. But will Glenn accept that love from Maggie?
Yeah. So 2 more major points. We have Shane, and he's really upset that they brought Randall back to the farm. He thinks it's a stupid decision. He doesn't understand why they would do that. We have him spiraling, and we have Andrea come in to talk to him. And I thought this was a very interesting scene. She says something like, you're making all the right calls, but it's like your appearance or presentation that like leaves a lot to be desired, and that you're scaring people and that you're pushing everyone away. Which is kind of a contrast to how she's been this whole time, she's been siding with him, but now she's starting to kind of like show what she wants him to like think about what he's doing, which I wouldn't have expected from her at this point. I think it's showing that, you know, she still has some of that good in her. Like, she's she's stuck between these two worlds. And so what do you think of like her kind of like trying to, I don't know, what do you think of that?
Well, I think she believes that Shane has made the right decisions, but Shane's handling those decisions in a very violent way.
Yeah.
And people are not seeing the decisions; they're seeing the violence or the attitude and what Shane is exhibiting. And Andrea sees the value in this assertive leadership that Shane is demonstrating, and that's what she wants in herself. She doesn't want to be violent like Shane, where she scares people. She wants to be the assertive leader, and she knows that Shane can be that person also. So for me, that was a really love, right? Andrea was expressing the desire for Shane to become a good person. Than she desires to be. So again,
Yeah.
I thought that was a beautiful scene.
Yeah, and showing her development too. Again, very different from when she told. I think there is a difference. She told Dale that like Shane's done more for this group, and that it goes to that she believes he's making the right decisions. But even she can tell, like can admit that his attitude and his violent is not working for the group. And so, yeah, again, for her to like say that, it brings multiple layers to her character, which we kind of already knew. But so let's go to this final scene where this like brought me by surprise, that Lori tells Rick that everything like Shane's done and that he lied, and that he thinks that the baby is his, and he thinks that Lori is his, and that she thinks that he killed Otis. And we have this look on Rick's face, and you can tell something is coming up next episode or soon with them. So what did you think of that final scene?
For me, it was that look of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect the people that I love. It was the look that was on his face when he had to shoot those guys in the bar. It's the hard decisions, and Rick's going to make them. Again, Rick's dealing with this. What type of leader does he need to be? He's going to make the decision. He's going to be assertive. Not in the way that Shane is, but in the way that protects other people.
Yeah.
Where Shane is about protecting himself.
Yeah, but like that got me really excited for next episode and what's to come and whatever that confrontation is going to look like. I'm looking forward to that. But I would give this one like a 9.5. I thought it was a really strong episode.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we see these episodes, we talk a little bit after we watch them, and I think we always come back to about the same, review. These episodes are really good for character development.
They
and again,
are.
it's interesting to see people and the choices that they're making and the type of people they're becoming in a world full of threats and trauma and power struggles and love. It's such a great show.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week to talk about the 3 more episodes. We're getting close to the end of season 2. So yeah, we'll see you guys then. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Take care, everyone.